I love that George is giving us tons of updates, but maybe work a little bit more on wins. It's just a suggestion, not a demand. You do you. I am in no way controlling your actions. You are an adult. You can do what you want. I'll just be crying in the corner while thinking of Winds of Winter. So George talked a bit about Winds of Winter, writing Game of Thrones: A Song of Ice and Fire in general. First, he assured us that it is very important that he finishes A Song of Ice and Fire, stating, "It's very important to me to finish A Song of Ice and Fire, and I want to finish it strong so people look at it and say, this entire thing is an important work, not a half-finished or broken work. I know some of the more cynical people out there don't believe that, but it is true." And I feel like that lesson was kind of hit a little stronger home with how the Game of Thrones HBO TV series ended, and how many people were gloating and saying, oh, fuck George, we don't need him anymore, we're gonna have the show's ending, and then the show ended terribly, and people were like, oh, ooh, yeah, maybe we were a little too fast on that, So yeah, even if George's A Song of Ice and Fire ends the way the show did, it's going to end a lot better because we're going to have it more fleshed out. And I wholeheartedly believe he is working on wins, but I know stress is very hard on him, and that he has to be in the right mental state to work. He's not Brandon Sanderson, who I'm sure can write wherever he is. He could probably write while doing a handstand. The guy is insane. But the downside is George admitted that when he's in those writing grooves, his real life suffers. George also said something I completely agree with, that social media makes creators' lives a living hell, and since he's the type of person that gets stressed by people wanting his next book, social media makes it worse, especially since some get really mean and snarky about it, and social media makes it so those snarky, impatient people are known. Which is kind of why I usually say I don't really like people in the early 20s or younger on YouTube. The comment section is not reality. It's a bunch of anonymous people that don't have to deal with consequences of their behavior because they're anonymous. And then you have younger people who don't quite understand that yet, or still trying to form self-esteem or who they are as a person. Seeing these comments and it warps their mind, which is why you see a lot of YouTubers in therapy trying to deal with things that people say to them online. Social media is kind of great for humanity, but also pretty terrible. George said for the millionth time he hates fan fiction, something I've talked about numerous times on this channel. You may remember George saying his A Song of Ice and Fire books won't be getting the Wheel of Time treatment, where someone else finishes it for him if he dies. So on fanfiction, he said, "I don't think it's a good way to train to be a professional writer when you're borrowing everybody else's world and characters. That's like riding a bike with training wheels. And then when I took the training wheels off, I fell over a lot. But at some point, you have to take the training wheels off here. You have to invent your own characters. You have to do your own world building. You can't just borrow from Gene Roddenberry or George Lucas or me or whoever. The other thing is, there are all sorts of copyright issues when you're using other people's work. My understanding of the law is that if I knew about, I would have to try to stop it. So just don't tell me about it, and do what you want there. It's not for me. I don't want to read it, and I would not encourage people to write it." Oh, and he also talked about violence in his series, as that is something he's been heavily criticized for, though I think the show more so was criticized for sexual violence. So he basically explained that you have to present violence honestly, and that both good and bad guys, of course good and bad in quotations, both sides commit terrible crimes during war. He also added on to that saying, "Just because you include dragons doesn't mean the whole thing should be removed from our human experience that we know about." Finally, George said that he would have sided with Robert Ned and John Aaron in Robert's rebellion, which I kind of figured he would. So that is your George update. Like, subscribe, and let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below.